At number 6, I have the 2001 New England Patriots. The Patriots had made 2 Super Bowls prior in 85 and 96. And unfortunately, they came up short. Matter of fact, they ended up getting embarrassed in those Super Bowls. Bill Belichick was already a head coach. He had just come off of a losing season the season prior, a 5-11 record, as he was in his second year as the head coach of the Patriots. So no one was sure what was going to happen next. But they would draft a quarterback in the 6th round from Michigan by the name of Tom Brady. But no one knew what he was going to become yet. So they had Drew Bledsoe. Plus, they added they had a great free agency, adding players such as Mike Vrabel from the Steelers, Charles Johnson from the Eagles. Plus, they had a nice draft. They drafted DT Richard Seymour in the 1st round. Also, offensive tackle Matt Light, who would turn out to be key contributors, to the Patriots dynasty. But the Patriots were ready to go in the 2001 season to see if they can improve upon the previous year. Now, it got off to a rough start for them as they lost their first 2 games to the Bengals and Jets. As a matter of fact, by the first 7 games, they were 3-4. And they were really struggling. But Drew Bledsoe ended up with a season-ending injury, and they had to go to the 6th round pick in Tom Brady. And he led them to a Week 3 victory over the Colts. But later in the season, the Patriots would find their stride under Tom Brady, and they would win 7 of their last 8 games. And they would finish the regular season. 8 of their last 9 games. My apologies. To finish with an 11-5 record. They would capture the NFC West as well as the number 2 seed in the AFC. Now, once again, like I said, they had their struggles on offense under Brady. They finished 15th in offense, averaging 305 yards per game. They were 22nd in passing, averaging 193 passing yards per game. They were 13th in rushing, averaging 112 rushing yards per game. They finished 11th in passing TDs, which they had 21 passing TDs, which averaged out to 1.3 passing TDs per game. But they finished it 7th in rushing TDs, having 15 rushing TDs, which averaged out to 1.0 rushing TDs per game. And, excuse me, they finished 6th in points allowed, which they averaged 23 points per game. But they also had a very dominating defense with Richard Seymour, Ty Law, also other dudes like Damian Woody, Willie McGinnis. They were pretty middle of the pack, but as the season progressed, they definitely got stronger. They finished 25th in total defense, giving up 334 yards per game. They finished 25th in pass defense, giving up 218 passing yards per game. They finished 19th in rushing defense, giving up 115 rushing yards per game. But they finished 6th in points allowed, giving up only 17 points per game. They finished 13th in sacks, which they finished with 41 sacks, which averaged out to 2.5 sacks per game. And they finished 8th in takeaways, which they created 35 takeaways. Right, the Patriots were back in the playoffs. They were looking to finally get over that hump and win their first Super Bowl in franchise history. And it would come down to a very classic game, or infamous game that is still debated over 25 years later. They played at home in the divisional round against the Oakland Raiders. Now, the Raiders, they were up by 3 points late in the fourth quarter. And then Tom Brady went to attempt to pass. He tucked it. The ball came out of his hands. The ball was recovered by the Raiders. But then the refs, as well as the office in New York, looked at the call and said that it was an incomplete pass instead of a fumble. And the Patriots got to keep the ball. Now, as I mentioned, this is still debated to this day whether Tom Brady fumbled the ball or was it an incomplete pass. But this is one of the most infamous playoff games in NFL playoff history. The Patriots would go on to win it on an Adam Vinatieri field goal in overtime, 16-13. Now they headed off to Pittsburgh to face the number 1 seeded Pittsburgh Steelers in Heinz Field in the AFC Championship game. Now, this game was a close game also, but the Patriots came out dominant as they took a early 14-0 lead in the second quarter. But of course, the Steelers definitely wasn't going to go down, as they had the experience as well as the poise. They came back with a run of their own, but the Patriots ended up holding them off for a hard-fought 24-17 win in Pittsburgh to advance to their first Super Bowl since '96. Now they face one of the most dominant teams during that time that had a prolific offense. Matter of fact, they were labeled the greatest show on turf. They played the St. Louis Rams in the Super Bowl. They had Hall of Famers Kurt Warner, Isaac Bruce. Also, you had Marshall Faulk, one of the most prolific running backs, as well as another prolific receiver in Torrey Holt. Now, coming into this Super Bowl, the Rams were heavy favorites. A lot of people thought that the Patriots didn't belong on the same field that the Rams were going to win this Super Bowl very easy. But the Patriots came out and proved, came in with something to prove, to show that they did belong on the same field as the greatest show on turf. Now, it was definitely a grind out battle to begin. The Patriots defense held this one of the most historic offenses ever in the Rams to only 3 points. Also held them scoreless. Then the Patriots, they ended up taking a 14-3 lead in the second quarter. And in the third quarter, they took a 17-3 lead. But then, of course, the Rams definitely weren't going to be denied, as they came back with 14 straight points in the fourth quarter to tie the game at 17. Now, here's Tom Brady. Sometimes they say the legend begins with one moment. Well, here was Tom Brady, 6th-round pick here in the Super Bowl, trying to drive his team down the field to lead them to victory and try to lead them to their first Super Bowl title. And for a guy that was a 6th-round pick, he definitely showed his poise as he methodically led the Patriots down the field. Almost every yard he needed, he ended up getting. He found various receivers down the field, and he drove them all the way down to about close to the red zone. For a game-winning field goal. Now, Tom Brady did his job. It was up to Adam Vinatieri to finish it. So Adam Vinatieri had was looking at a 48-yard field goal to win the Super Bowl. But Adam Vinatieri, with ice water in his veins, ended up knocking the field goal through, and the Patriots won their first Super Bowl. Tom Brady was Super Bowl MVP, as he definitely played a great game. Well, played a pretty good game. He had, 16 completions on 27 attempts, 145 yards, a touchdown, with a QB rating of 86.2. Antoine Smith had a great game rushing, as he had 18 carries for 92 yards. Troy Brown, he did pretty good with 6 receptions on 6 targets for 89 yards. But the lone touchdown Tom Brady threw was to David Patton. But that game-winning drive definitely earned Brady the Super Bowl MVP, and rightfully so. This guy had only been 2 years removed from college, and here he ended up driving his team down the field. For a game winner. They ended up winning his team the Super Bowl. Now, I picked the Patriots here because this team was a Cinderella team. Nobody expected anything from them coming in. No one thought that they would, be a contender or even win the Super Bowl. A lot of people maybe just looked at them as a playoff team at the most, or maybe thought that they'll be back in the NFL draft again. But the legend of Tom Brady began here. And out of all the teams in the Patriots dynasty, this team is the most underrated team. People sleep on Troy Brown on how good he was. Also, I mentioned the defense. A lot of people definitely sleep on how great they were. Not just good. This defense was great. A lot of people sleep on them. I mean, you got a Hall of Famer in Richard Seymour, as well as Ty Law, Hall of Famers, my bad. But of course, you got Mike Vrabel, who's about to coach in the Super Bowl, as well as Teddy Bruschi. Also, Bobby Hamilton. My bad on Willie McGinnis. My apologies. He was on the other teams, not on the first one. That was my bad. But this team came together against some incredible odds and accomplished the impossible, which was winning the Super Bowl. Like I just mentioned, this was a Cinderella team that no one thought would be in that position. Plus, this is the kind of story movies are made about. A team of underdogs finally rising up and winning. And this Patriots team definitely should get a lot more credit than what they do. But since they weren't talented as the other Patriots teams, this team kind of gets lost in the shuffle of the dynasty. But this team definitely needs to be recognized because they were the first to break through and definitely paved the way for this Patriots dynasty.